Good evening, this is the Athens City Shade Tree Commission meeting for December 13th, 2018. We have no Title 33 or Title 37 issues. What we have though is a presentation by two students from Ohio University, and I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves and their presentation.
All right. Hello, my name is Christopher Brodkin. I'm from the Ohio University Voinovich School.
Hi, I'm Andreana Madera. I'm also from the Ohio University Voinovich School, and we're both graduate students for the Environmental Studies program.
So for a school project, we did an update on a tree inventory. The first one was done by Jackie Klopfer for her practicum. It was a practicum. So we just went ahead and updated it. So a little background, it started as a project for this very class that we're in, which is Lorraine's class. It's called Environment and Community. And so we've also taken on that project. And we did the near east side neighborhood. We did Morris and Elmwood. We walked up and down the streets, looked at every tree, measured it, figured out what species it was. Also looked at its health, see if it was healthy, growing, dying, dead, whatnots. And I think we wanted to use this as part of like a method to inform you guys about possible policy changes and or just management plans. So to highlight, that's Jackie's original neighborhood. She did the east side, the near east side, the west side, as well as the far east side. And so we just took a small slice of that. And like I said, the purpose of the project was an inventory. After about 4 years, we wanted to see how much the trees have grown or changed, all that. And then we wanted to supply data to you guys to figure out if you needed to change anything with your management policy, if you needed to update anything, or just maybe provide some recommendations to us or help get the word out. We also wanted to talk to the residents of the city and sort of foster a relationship with them. These are city-owned trees, but it's up to the residents to take care and maintain these trees. And so we also wanted to take that opportunity to forge a relationship with the students of the university, with the city folks, as well as the tree commission.
Okay, so as Chris mentioned, our study site was only Elmwood and Morris Avenue. It's the area circled in red. Unlike Jackie's practicum that involved a bigger area, we only concentrated in 2 streets in specific. And for a methodology, we use a diameter tape for the diameter breast height to see how much the trees have grown over the period of 4 years, which was 4 years ago that Jackie did her practicum. We also, in order to identify the species, we use a What Tree Is That book, and then we use ARC data collector in our phones. It's an app. It's GIS in your phone, so you can plot the coordinates where the trees are, and then we process that into our GIS online and converted the data into Excel to get all the numbers and produce all the results that we're going to say further on. So these are the species for Morris Streets. As you can see, this is of the total. It would be new and old trees. As you can see, the most prominent ones are the silver maple, the sugar maples, and the red maple ones.
And that's out of a total of 30 different species along that street. And when she says new species, that means new in the past 4 years. And when she talks about old ones, these are trees that have been there at the time of Jackie's inventory and possibly before.
Okay.
And for Elmwood Street, we had 26 different species, and the ones that were most prominent was the sugar maple and the sweet gum as well. So there was a total of 158 old trees, And the new replaced trees that replaced old trees were 25. And we had a total of new trees, which were either they used to be stumps or empty planting sites, so there are 18. So now there's a total in between both of the streets, there's a total of 201 trees. And in terms of species, the most prominent ones was the broadleaf deciduous medium, which is not as specifically yet identified. Most of them were, Chris, where were the most of them, like, some of them were maple or...
Yeah, they might have been like maples or hybrids or something that was unidentified.
Or ornamental trees that were actually planted by citizens.
You'll see that the second most popular is the conifer evergreen. And that comes with a caveat. We found that there was maybe one site across from the... There was one house across from there's a welding site. They had like 5 trees right in a row, just bang, bang, bang. And so that kind of is throwing off the number. So that doesn't mean that there's, evergreens all up and down the street. It's just concentrated in one area.
So we also checked for potential planting sites, and there used to be 17 planting sites. So now there's 15 new planting sites, and in terms of stumps, that trees that were cut over, there was 4, and there used to be 4, and we found 4 new stumps. So there's a total of 40 spaces that are a good potential to plant new trees. So here's an example of one in Morris Avenue where this tree was sick 4 years ago, as you can see by the leaves that are like falling down, and now it is a stump. It was cut down.
So that's a perfect planting site. It's ready to go for a new tree. We recommend that.
And we also checked the condition of the trees, and we noticed that in Elmwood there's 1 new dead tree and 1 new that is not in a great condition. The one with the most new dead trees is still, well, sorry, they're not new dead trees. They're trees that are dead or were dead already in 4 years ago. And in Morris Avenue there's a total of 8 dead trees and 2 in poor condition.
So we should really look after those poor ones, see if we can't nurse them back down.
Yeah. So just an overall of what we just said, there's a total of 241 plots, which consists of 32 empty planting sites, 8 stumps, which also counts as planting sites, and 201 trees in between the 2 streets. And most of the new trees, as mentioned, are unknown broadleaf deciduous. So most of these trees we noticed that were ornamental, that were planted by citizens, not necessarily by the city, and we couldn't identify them because they were like non-natives or hybrids. Here are some pictures that we can see of the examples we just said. This is property owner tree replacement in Elmwood Street that we saw. Here's some empty planting sites in Elmwood as well.
Joe Shields' house.
I was going to say, I recognize that.
I'll put that on Facebook.
And these are some of the historic, beautiful old trees in Elmwood Street. Sidewalk trees in Elmwood as well. And why is this important? Well, there was a study conducted that it studied the canopy of trees overall in the United States. The difference is that they did it with GIS aerial photos, and they noticed that the results were that the tree cover in the urban communities is declining by 36 million. And so the darker shades are for the states with the most decline in canopy width, and the ones that have the lines is that they're specifically important for this study. So, as you all may know, the benefits of trees are many. They not only benefit the environment, they also benefit society as well, because they produce oxygen, they sequestrate carbon as well as air pollution and noise, and they also people like living around trees, so they increase the property value. And it also has stormwater reduction. Oh, and also very important, a case that I like to point out, it reduces the heating and cooling costs of the house, because I used to have a big tree that gave shade to it covered all my little house. And when it died, we had to put an AC central system.
So some of the recommendations we had, we definitely should figure out some way to engage and inform these citizens, because I saw there was a few ornamental plantings, or maybe some mismanagement or mishandling of these trees. Maybe some were close together, some were just the wrong type. And I don't think these were done intentionally or with any sort of malice. I think somebody maybe just bought something they thought were pretty, stuck it in the tree lawn, and then, you know, maybe it's not up to city code, or maybe it's the wrong type of tree. So there needs to be maybe some type of way to, like, go to the nurseries and say, hey, I know you're looking for a tree, maybe pick one of these species, maybe 6 or 7 species. In order to do that, maybe you should kind of gauge the community as sort of like, what do they know about the city code? What are their preferences? Anything about tree maintenance that could possibly be done through the university, or maybe just on a volunteer basis. Jackie did a wonderful job with her tree assessment. However, it is 4 years old, and we've only done 2 streets, and we found plenty more planting sites, almost 40 of them. So I recommend expanding that out to figure out if there's any other places we can put trees in little nooks and crannies, or big open spaces. Just expand our urban tree canopy. Definitely we need to have somebody come around and just assess the health of them. We found a couple trees that are poor or pretty close to dead, and I mean, a qualified arborist could come around and nurse that thing back to health, and then wouldn't have to rip it up and plant a new tree. Save the city time, money, effort. And then definitely, I think, improve the diversity of the trees. We did find a lot of trees, there was maybe 8 sweet gums right in a row. And the problem with that is, let's say there's a disease happening to the sweet gums, and then there goes an entire block of the street. Maybe mix and match them up a little bit. And then lastly, just choose the correct planting sites. I know the power companies, they'll come along and they'll just lop off the tops of the trees if they're underneath the wires. So maybe find a tree that doesn't grow as tall if you're going to plant under wires, or try to move it away to avoid being damaged. That's
I think that's Elmwood, right?
Yeah, it's Elmwood.
It's very beautiful.
And we would like to thank Jackie Crawford for inspiring this project, first of all, and Lorraine McCosker, our professor, for helping us through all the process, and Bomer for showing us how trees actually work, because I did not know anything about trees back before I met her, and Ron Lucas also for all of his help, and the friendly neighbors. They were really friendly, very nice.
In some cases, very helpful. A lot of them knew more about the trees that they were in their front yards than we did. They're very helpful.
What else did you find out from talking with people?
They love their trees. I mean, they go bananas over their trees. I had this lady come out. She had a jungle in her little tree lawn, and she talked to me for almost an hour about her trees and how the whole street changed and how it's so much better with trees. And
Good.
all kinds of stuff.
Did she mention that whether or not she had planted any of the trees?
She didn't go around to saying that she directly planted them, but I mean, some of them still had stickers on from low. So
It was pretty obvious.
You mentioned Elmwood and Morris. Were those
Correct.
the 2 streets that you did, or?
Yes, those were the only 2 streets we did in our.
And they had 260 trees on it.
201.
201 trees, and then another 40.
Oh yeah, that's right. 201
available
and then
slots to
60
plant.
openings.
lot
That's
of
a lot of
trees for a
trees
small
on 2 streets.
So were you looking at the areas between the house, within the right-of-way between the house and the sidewalk?
Yes. So we're looking at the right-of-way. So you have the street, and then that some people call it the tree lawn, some call it the double strip, and that's where we were looking.
But you were looking beyond the tree lawn.
Not
No,
really.
just
so
the city
in the case down, when you go Elmwood and then past May Street, since there was no sidewalk, we didn't look at any of that. We consider that residential property.
But, so you did, but the right-of-way extends often beyond the sidewalk. So there's the tree lawn, which is usually in the right-of-way.
Yes.
There's a sidewalk, and then beyond that, often that area, so trees can be planted there and they're still city trees.
They can. We didn't look at that. I think the reason we did that is
So you were just looking at trees in the tree lawn
Just in the tree
or
lawn.
equivalent?
yes,
Okay. I'm sorry.
just made it simpler for us. That's really why.
Yeah.
Sure.
No, your data's clean. Yeah.
You might want to explain that you had all that material from Jackie. So Jackie had put the material into her GIS.
So
Yeah. And that's what she concentrated on.
Format, so they were going back and looking exactly at.
okay, all right, right.
Mm-hmm.
And did you go to the city website to see what help we offer residents for species choice?
There are our partner. He's not here. He went to the website. He did find a couple codes that were on there, but the way he made it sound is it wasn't very friendly for people. It wasn't just like, oh, I'm going to Walmart. Quick, let me get on this website really quick.
Well, we're supposed to have, I thought we had suggestions on there, but I haven't looked
We have our
myself
complete
recently.
list, but I mean, it
You
depends
do.
what you mean by ease of use
Yeah,
and how much effort people want to put in. Nancy, I think, has a question.
Well, we've been discussing the possibility of providing education and information to people, and I was interested in the list that you had made of what you thought would help. Were those things that you came up with, or did you discuss that with the people that you met as a result of this?
We came up with them, but they were informed by discussions as well as literature that we've read, and then talking to some of the experts. in the field.
Maybe you could share that with us if you've got a
Definitely.
printed copy, so we could.
Yeah, if there is a report or a thesis going with this, if you could get an electronic copy to me, I'll circulate it to the.
We have a report we're going to deliver to Ron Lucas. We can also.
Oh, okay.
give you a copy of
That
as
would be
well.
good. Yeah, yeah. We'd like to see that. One comment I'd have: you mentioned hybrids as if they're offensive. They're in fact needed.
No.
The silver
Yeah.
maple, we don't allow people to plant that. What we do allow people to plant is a cross between the silver maple and the red maple called the Acer freemanii. And that may have been what you saw as a tree you
Yeah.
couldn't identify.
We didn't want it to sound offensive. It was just one of those. If it wasn't a silver maple, it wasn't in the book. It was just a little more difficult.
Yeah, well, I'm surprised they don't have Acer freemanii in the arbor list, but
Well, that would probably look like a red maple, wouldn't it?
That's probably.
Or-
could be.
it could have been mislabeled
Yeah.
in the original
Yeah.
or the new data.
But sometimes these hybrids are generated because of issues. The silver maple drops branches very easily,
Yes.
and the Acer freemanii that replaces it, as far as we're concerned, is a fast-growing tree that doesn't have the branch dropping problems. And so at the bottom end of Morris Avenue, you'll see several Acer freemanii that have planted less than 20 years ago, and now they are substantial trees. And that's one advantage we get with trees like that.
It is.
Quite often people want to plant oaks and so on, which are good trees, but they take a long time to grow, unless they're pin oaks. And they have their own problems.
And those are some of the problems we experience.
Yeah.
We might have the hybrids, which are a little difficult to identify on our book. But then, if everybody plants a hybrid, then what happens if something happens?
Oh, no, but you actually found, I think on Morris Avenue, there were 30
30
different species,
Yeah.
and on
Which is great.
Elmwood Place you found 20
26.
something, and that's wonderful.
Yeah, right.
That is. So our recommendation on getting a variety of species, that's not necessarily localized just to Elmwood. So any future place,
Yeah.
maybe take a look at how many species are there.
Yeah, I mean,
We
I have a colleague over here who thumps the table and says, "Why are you planting all the same trees?" So yes, we're very aware of that one, and but there are times though when we're dealing with plans for landscapes that we can't tell people what to plant. We can only recommend what they plant, and we would recommend against planting many of the same species. But often you finish up with those designs using only 3 or 4 species, because just for design reasons they don't want to put more than that in there.
It's easier.
And the other thing is the nurseries don't stock more than about 4 different species of large shade trees at the moment.
I have been aware that people are now buying trees online, which I think is a little. It's a great opportunity.
They've been buying trees online for years.
Yeah. So you don't have to think about the nurseries having such a limited stock. That's no longer an excuse, I think, to have.
Well, the thing to be careful of is if you buy them online from any place that's far from here, you risk infecting our tree stock with other stuff. The other one is that it's much better to buy trees that have been grown north of us if you can, because they're fairly certain then that they'll actually withstand the winters that we've got. If you go much further south than us, you can run into problems with trees that just that aren't hardy enough to withstand our winters.
So then, if I was a person trying to buy a tree online, what would you recommend I do? How would I figure out if it's been northern or southern?
Well, you look at geographically. You just look at it. I mean, if hopefully the nursery address is there, and if it's in northern Ohio, Indiana, Michigan, Pennsylvania.
I know it sounded like an obvious question.
Yeah,
and they'll tell you what zones it grows.
It will tell you what zone that it's suitable for. But the other issue is, and this is one that I think we're going to see more emphasis on, is that we don't want to transport plant species generally too far. I mean, it's a bad idea because you're bringing diseases from one place and putting them in another place where the plants there are not used to those things. And the soil around most plants contains an incredible number of organisms. And so we need to be careful.
What would you recommend as a way to educate the community? I mean, would you recommend electronic resources, meetings?
I would definitely say first letter, because not everyone has is not electronically available or stuff. And definitely I've noticed the short time I've been here in Athens that Athens has local community meetings and people actually come, unlike where my community is. So definitely also have meetings, but I would say that the best way to assess it would be sending just letters, printing letters, explaining them to them.
Yeah. Okay.
I would also maybe say you can do a magnet or some type of advertisement with a calendar on it. Stick it on the fridge. It has all your recommendations right there. Or 10 facts about trees. And by the way, here's when the Ohio University is playing the football. Something like that.
Yeah, no, that's a good idea.
Could you explain how you chose the two streets out of the study that was done 4 years ago to look at yourselves?
It's a tricky one. I think we really chose the two streets because they were suggested to us. Mainly one for our diversity, two for a lot of trees, and then three just because the residents there seem to be a little more friendly and willing than maybe other parts of the city. That's the impression I got.
Okay.
It wasn't because it's Lorraine Street.
I mean, it could have been for that too.
No, really.
And I live on Morris Avenue, so
Because it really has the most diversity.
It does.
The most trees of all the city streets. The most diversity in age and species.
In fact,
And Elmwood's beautiful too.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful street.
in fact, I think John Nouse may have had some surveys done, did some surveys years ago of that area. I don't know how detailed they were, but he used to try and look at the diversity of trees on various streets in Athens.
I'm under the impression that before Jackie did her practicum, the most recent was about 1991.
Well, that would have been the tree inventory that was done for the city.
Yes.
But now I'm talking about a private citizen, John Nouse, who used to do these tree walks around the neighbourhood.
Okay.
And if you could ask him, he might be able to add in some extra information to this.
Would be a good idea.
Yeah.
Any other comments or questions?
One last question. You cite Dave Nowak article in 2017. I was wondering if you could maybe through Lorraine just send me that source. I'd be interested in that.
Of course, yeah, we can.
Yeah.
But briefly, tell them about Dave Nowak.
What's that?
Tell them about Dave Nowak.
I've met him a couple times.
Oh,
I don't know a whole lot about Dave, but he's worked a lot with Baltimore Ecosystem Study, and I've done some urban tree canopy work in Baltimore. So he's done a lot of the really groundbreaking work on tree canopy for the Forest Service.
Yeah, he is leading the charge and the one that's really been able to quantify tree loss across the United States.
Is that who wrote the article that
Say again?
You had an article that you
I
sent us.
probably have forwarded his stuff.
We'll
his
send
research.
it. We'll send it to everyone.
Yeah, Google
Yeah, that'd be
Dave
great.
Nowak. He's fascinating. He's done a lot to show where we're having success in restoring forest canopies and where we're failing.
Yeah.
What
And,
does he have suggestions?
Mostly where we're having success is with the Lanthus and Norway maple in waste areas, and these residential areas and commercial areas where we're trying to plant trees. You know, they live 13 to 20 years and quit. So it's a real challenge. But you know, he's a fascinating guy, and he's come to Ohio several times to do conferences and stuff. So if you, definitely Google him.
He's been writing since the 1990s on urban trees.
One thing I'm curious about, if you have any information on how to calculate tree coverage, because 18 years ago the city had the Davy Group do a survey of the city, and I think they recommended a city of this size and type have 27% tree coverage, and I think we were on the order of 20 to 25%, somewhere in that range. And we've been using that as one of our arguments to try and boost the number of trees that are planted in the city. We then have this other issue that Anne's referring to, that in many developments, trees only last for 30 years because they get redeveloped. And trees have to grow for longer than that. So I would assume with modern technology, you may be able to do tree canopy calculations a lot more efficiently than could be done 20 years ago. And so if you've got any information about that, I
the article that we were just discussing, they use GIS aerial photograph, so I would think that would be the best.
So these are satellite.
Satellite images.
Google Earth is an amazing tool.
Well, but what you really want is a reliable way then to go in and calculate the coverage, because doing that sort of image analysis usually requires careful work with the design of the software that's doing it.
We have mathematicians.
You might just need to talk to the computer science department. They can write a program.
I think Jackie Clumper used LiDAR. There was a LiDAR assessment going on in the region, and she actually found that there had been a significant decrease in canopy. So I think that we
relative to when?
To the 91 study.
Oh, okay. Because as I say, we had this one done in about the year 2000 when one of the comprehensive plans was being done. But they didn't. That data couldn't be referenced back to the 1991 survey, because what they were using, I think, was aerial photographs and calculating what the coverage generated by the trees was. So it wasn't counting trees; it was looking at the coverage and coming up with this number that was less than 27%, which they felt was the target for a city of this character.
Yeah, I think now they're recommending 40% in residential areas, 10% in downtown areas, and 20% in corporate areas. Is that right? But I remember the 40 in the residential. It's really hard to achieve, especially when you have a lot of rentals. That's a Dave Nowak thing. That's a U.S. Forest Service.
Good luck on trying to get that much.
I know.
Oh, we could try.
Well, we have a requirement, I think, in the city that commercial rental properties like that have to have 40% of their land not developed, permeable. And that came from part of that argument that there should be 40% coverage of trees, and so they just use that.
I wonder if we approached people whose yards were bare, and to see if they would be interested in a tree in their yard, what kind of response we would get. I mean, some people who have the stumps are people who don't want to have more trees because they're afraid they're going to get fallen on. But I think there are people who probably are unaware of the benefits and don't realize what they're missing.
I think the challenge is there is a very high percentage of rental properties. And so that's, when you look at distribution of trees in urban areas, rental areas are often the ones that are very detreed.
That we're talking about, probably not that much,
right.
But some.
Roughly half the properties on Morris Avenue are rental properties, and I think it might be similar on Elmwood Place. Yeah. Now they're rented to families, to graduate students rather than undergraduates, so you tend not to notice this. But again, if you go to the city website, you can figure out what the percentage is because all the properties are listed at the Code Office website. And it's astonishing how high the rental fraction is in this city. Still.
Well, the Far East side has fewer, I think, probably.
Yes.
Too far from
Yeah.
the university.
Perceptions, though, because a lot of people might. The studies have shown some people don't. They don't really. They think more crime is going to come in, or they don't want to pick up the litter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We did have we presented this in Lorraine's class as well, and we had one of the classmates mention that, if I'm not mistaken, San Francisco has a project where they plant fruit trees, and the homeless can pick up the fruits and take the fruits home. What would be the policy here in Athens to either plant fruit trees in the city area, or as she mentioned about, hey, do you want a fruit tree in your backyard so you can have shade and also some fruits?
Well, the city doesn't provide trees to plant on private property. We've not encouraged planting of trees that bear fruit because most of them are small and we want shade trees.
Okay.
I think we had one project and I don't think it ever came through. It's behind the village bakery where there was supposed to be fruit trees planted. The difficulty with the fruit tree projects is that nobody's prepared to clean up, and unfortunately, you're not going to, unless they're really well maintained trees. That most of those apples are not going to get eaten. We do have some sites in the city where there are apples, and they basically fall.
Yeah.
Yeah, Highland Park has some pear trees, pawpaws, and they're doing well, but they're not utilized, which is kind of interesting.
Well, Community Food Initiatives actually has, are you familiar with they have, let's call it the urban orchard, and they have plotted the trees. But what happens, and then there's the issue of pruning, because those need to be pruned on a regular basis. And that's done in part by the master gardener interns. They're taken to some of these areas and pruning is demonstrated, and so some of them get pruned that way. But you might contact Community Food Initiatives and see how that project is going, because that's something that somebody thought of, and they were also trying to plant nut trees, but I don't know how organized the harvesting is. Because as David says, you see fruit trees and then the fruit's not being utilized.
Because I was thinking about that, what about the fruits that are left uneaten? And then I thought, well, what about the Athens Hawking composting facility? What if they do an arrangement and they can pick them up and take them to the compost facility?
They'd be welcome to pick them up.
That's a possibility. That is a possibility.
As long as somebody's willing to collect it.
Yeah.
They're not bad for wildlife.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Other questions?
When are you going to do the rest?
As soon as I get money for it.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Enjoyed your presentation.
For having us.
Okay. Now, Anne, you have an announcement, I think.
Well, mark your calendars for May 3rd, 2019. That'll be the annual Tree City USA Awards program. That'll be hosted by the City of Belpre. So you have no excuse. It's close this year. They're planning a fun program. And then June 21st, 2019, the Ohio Department of Natural Resources Division of Forestry will be celebrating 40 years of growing tree care programs in Ohio. So we are planning a big bash to celebrate that milestone, but we also want to create a statewide learning opportunity for the tree commissioners that we serve, and it'll be most likely in Columbus, most likely at the Expo Center. So mark your calendars for that, and keep your eye out for more information on that.
Okay.
It should be a really fun day of demos and information.
Are you going to send that out on email?
Yeah, I don't have the publicity stuff yet, but it'll, as it gets closer.
It'll get sent out.
Yeah, you'll get those delusion emails from me.
Yes.
Like you do. So.
Thank you, Anne. Other business, the Tree Commission? If not, we have the minutes of the last meeting. And I do have a complete copy. All you've got is the cover sheet, but I do have the complete, all the attachments. And
Maybe, do you have any further information on the, you've been kind enough to collect data on the trees that have been banked.
I do not have any additional data other than those 3.
Okay. I'm waiting for the next exciting change.
Yeah, I'll work on that.
Did we get them or not?
Did we get what?
The trees.
No.
Right.
Because the city hasn't set up the process.
Are you guys talking about the tree bank?
Yeah.
I've had a lot of inquiries about that.
Direct them to Ron.
Okay, so there is a tree bank, but there's no process for.
That's correct. We have our process which says that we can give approval of tree banking if 2/3 of us agree that the trees can't be planted on the site. And then we recommended that the Code Office take that as a fee when they're issuing the building permits. But that's our recommendation. And at the moment, nothing else has been done in terms of what those fees are being used for and so on.
But the fees are being collected.
We don't know that.
The city is technically owed about 128 trees by various different sites that received this approval.
Within the last
2 years.
2 years?
Yeah.
Wow.
And we've recognized that our follow-up is sometimes an area that needs to be strengthened.
Yes.
So we're working on that too.
Yeah.
So if people have questions about the tree bank.
Ron Lucas.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Particularly as he's not here tonight.
What are the questions regarding? Like,
I've had a lot of people inquire about the tree bank. The fair board.
Okay.
Here, excellent place to plant trees. They actually want to plant trees. They don't have a lot of financial resources to do so.
Okay.
But they've got the labor. Mm-hmm. So they were inquired, and then last night at the Athens Conservancy meeting, there's a group in Athens that's been doing some guerrilla planting and cemeteries.
Yes.
You probably.
He was here, wasn't he?
Yeah, I think they did come to tell you about what they were doing. They planted quite a few little trees. These are not trees that would be something you could.
Did you say guerrilla planting?
Yeah, they're working loosely with the city, and getting permission and stuff. But anyways, they would like to. They have a lot of energy. They want to do more to support your efforts, and they kind of had their eye on the tree bank, but they've gotten nowhere on that either.
Yeah.
So is the next step for the city, Ron Lucas, to
and the code director to decide exactly what the process is going to be.
Yeah.
They have to follow. I mean, we can't dictate to them what they do.
Yeah, we just make recommendations.
It's just that the city council gave the tree commission the ability to allow trees to be banked, but there's no administrative backup to deal with how that process actually works.
So maybe they need language. Some examples from how
In
other
some way
cities do it, maybe,
decision.
or is it?
Well, we need the
Similar than
mechanism.
that? Okay.
We need they need a mechanism to do it.
Yeah.
And then there was some problem with one calendar year to another that seemed to be.
Well, there's an issue under the accounting rules that they have, that they operate, that they don't carry money from one year to the next on a project. So that's another challenge that the city has. So these are all administrative details. They're not something that we can really help with. The mayor, basically, and the service safety director are the two people who can really influence what happens.
Made some suggestions and recommendations.
Well, we did right at the start. We told them that the code director should collect the money and that Ron Lucas should set up the account to keep it in.
Well, and maybe I can show some examples of what other towns are doing. This is not a new approach.
Yeah.
There are other cities that have found a way to bank
Great
these
idea.
monies.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to follow up.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, it seems to me you could just, you could issue a purchase order to a couple of different nurseries and then just receive trees as you need them out of that. And that way, go from one fiscal year to the next.
Yeah. I mean,
there's ways to do this. That's not that difficult.
Encumbering the money like that is an ideal way. But
it's
again,
not that difficult to do.
I'm not their accountant, and I'm not going to tell them how to run their operations, because that's not what we do. But that's the problem. It's just a purely administrative problem as I see it.
But that's really good to know there's inquiries.
Yes. We appreciate
it. And those are very good inquiries for use of of these bank trees.
I think what I notice, as somebody who serves a lot of different towns, Athens residents love trees and want to see trees and want to see stewardship and would support a lot more planting, I think, and a lot more activity. Let's take advantage of that. And that's why I think I get stopped in Kroger's. They ask me about. So I'll follow up.
Okay, please do. Thank you.
Well, it sounds like, if it's correct that people are planting trees in the tree lawn on their own hook, so to speak, that they aren't aware that there are requirements for, you have to get permission. You're supposed to get permission to put a tree in the right-of-way. So, now, if a squirrel plants a seed and it grows, I'm not sure you have to get permission to keep the tree, but.
Well, and I think that's the challenge that Chris brought up, is that a lot of those trees were really not, they're calorie care. I think some of them are shrubs. They're not trees. Then it's a wasted spot.
You'll find a tree that's too small for a plant.
Yeah, that can handle.
Right in the middle.
Right. Okay. It's that education piece.
Exactly. Yeah. So you could have put 2 trees here.
Anything else from the minutes of our last meeting?
No, I'll approve them.
Thank you, David.
I'll second.
Thank you, Nancy. Any objection to approving the minutes of the last meeting? Hearing.
Maybe I better.
You can. John?
No, I don't have any objection.
Good, thank you.
Well, I'm not approving because I wasn't here.
Oh, you weren't there either?
No, I wasn't here, so I didn't.
That's right.
I shouldn't second it.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Thank you.
I actually read them and
you were here too.
them.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
went right in.
Right. And if there's no objection, we'll approve the minutes of the last meeting.
Okay.
Our next meeting will be next year, January the 10th, in the City Council chamber at 7 o'clock. Thank you. We are adjourned.